The story from ancient_educator_76. Empty your pockets or I'm calling the police. Let's empty your store instead. Pre-TL, DR. I'm super pissed about what just happened to me for multiple reasons, so I apologize for my lack of candor, concern, or how this shut tea comes across. Not mobile, just literally trembling right now. All names have been changed to protect my sanity. So this just happened on my lunch break, as I drove to the other side of town to cash in my scratcher. By other side of town, I mean across the invisible border that separates areas that can sell scratchers and areas that can't. Tribal grounds don't sell scratchers or lottery at convenience stores. I drove to this place because I wanted a soda and some snacks, a healthy lunch for a teacher, and usually don't go here unless I need lottery. It's a cool-looking little mom-and-pop place, but the second I stepped in, the cashier just gave me an icy stare for some reason. Little background. I have 3 of my 5 children on the autism Asperger's spectrum, and though I myself was never diagnosed as a child, I can guarantee that I have similar tendencies, and I have a feeling that my lack of proper eye contact might have something to do with the cashier's high noon stare. A realization that came to me the second I typed it, now, greater than. As I was walking into the place, I contemplated cashing the scratcher, $5 yay, right away, but decided I'd wait until I get my stuff and then cash it at the same time. In this indecisiveness, I found myself fumbling around in my pockets and feeling to make sure I had my car keys. A nervous habit that I have, I probably check once every 15 minutes, whether I'm in at home, on the road, or sometimes even sleeping. I can't tell you how many times I checked my pockets, but I can tell you that someone staring at me increases the frequency. I picked my items mentally, but yet again checked my pockets to see if I had enough change plus the $5 to pay for the items. It felt like I had enough, and I want to use this as a math problem for my students. If I had 17 coins, only dimes and quarters, and it was a total of $3.05, how many of each coin did I have? As I return even. I'm deep in thought about this problem when I hear yelling or something that sounds like blah blah police. Love you like a father, John Mulaney. I look up and see a lady right in my face. Oh, I'd be horrible in a bank robbery, presumably repeating herself, saying, empty your pockets or I'm calling the police. She didn't have generalized pronunciation issues, but she for some reason super-emphasized the end syllable. Just don't know how to properly depict that. It was borderline funny, and I kind of laughed as I started to comply simultaneously with the moment she took her gnarly little smoky fingers and dug her nails into my arm. She had to reach up. I'm 6'3". She's not. I like to consider my pain threshold pretty good, but this chick was seriously hurting me, trying to drag me to someplace. I just went along with her, told her, calm the down here, as I pulled super sharply away from her increasingly painful grasp. She yelled at me again, empty your pockets, and then to some empty air, call the police. Time for malicious compliance as quick as I can manage. I took this moment to think to myself, oh, I better empty my damn pockets right now before this gets out of hand. It was already way out of hand. It just took me a beat to realize. I quickly started emptying my pockets, which had 32 pieces of a ripped-up scratcher, 3 receipts, 2 of which showed me my hours at Mendy's, 1 was to a car wash or something, my wallet, a straw wrapper, and with everything I took out of my pockets, I smacked it on her checkout area individually, saying, see? This isn't your shut, this isn't your shut, this, oh wait, no, it's also not your shut. And when I got through almost everything, I skipped a few with the scratcher pieces, and finally ended with the scratcher I was going to cash in there. I realized that I was acting out of anger and physical pain, and should probably take it down a notch. I took this opportunity to thoroughly enjoy the dastardly malice inherent in placing an assortment of ripped-up papers upon a counter. Her entire counter was covered in absolute garbage, mixed with about 5% of the surface area, representing stuff I need. I'm a chipmunk, what can I say? Now she's got a mess to clean up. But that's just the beginning. I then started emptying my shirt pocket, which had my teacher ID, my pens, my whiteboard marker. Yes, I keep all this in my shirt pocket, and yes, I wear a button-up chap's shirt over my jeans. I then put my arms spread out as if to say, "Would you like to check anywhere else? I'm clean." She just kept shaking her head at me, shaking her head to someone off in the distance, and then the cops roll up. I can't believe she actually called. Had someone call? The police. As the car pulled up, I just couldn't explain to you how glorious this was, because we, the lady and I, both had satisfying grins on our collective faces. Her, because she thought I was done for, and subsequently told me, "Now we'll really search you." Component placement and me, because it's none other than my school's SRO, resource officer, who just so happened to get the call somehow. I was bleeding through my shirt, and I could feel it. I don't know how this was even scientifically possible, and if I read someone write this, I wouldn't believe it, but swear to God she broke the skin through my polo shirt. What in the actual? Anyway, Officer Gold walks in, and I was about to let on that I knew him by addressing him by name. Thank God I didn't, because not a good look. But he beat me to the punch by saying, "Davis, you holding up another liquor store?" With that dopey S smile he always has. I told him, "Hey, I emptied my pockets. You're willing to search me just—" Officer Gold. "Rich that won't be necessary. I can see your pockets are empty. Did she watch you empty them? Is there a camera?" He just continued rattling off his cop spiel, the sun beaming through his glasses from the opposite side, offering a ray of hope. Then turning to the lady, "Ma'am, can I ask you a few questions?" At which time he returned to me, about to tell me something when he sees my arm and says, "How the hell did that happen?" I thought, yeah, you might want to check the camera on that one too, but just looked directly at the lady to indicate the answer we both already knew. He then turned to the lady and told her to follow him. Had her perp walked to the outside of the store, when immediately a kid came running out to her defense with a steady stream of energy drinks clumsily clunking behind, and Gold turned toward him and had him sit down next to his mom on the curb outside. By this time, a second police car had arrived at the scene, had an exchange with Officer Gold, and Gold spoke with the mom while the new officer came to talk with me. She asked me the typical questions like when I got there, whether I'd been there earlier in the day, I hadn't, if I knew her or the son before today, etc. I guess thinking about it wasn't exactly a streamlined series of questions, but whatever. The truth is like a priceless gem surrounded by muddy. For those wanting another example, truth floats in a sea of lies. She asked me if I wanted to press charges against Rosie the Riveter. Seriously, I'm still throbbing right now from this woman's G.I. Joe kung fu grip, and despite the feeling of pain still throbbing through, all the while pumping my blood to my increasingly annoying headache, I simply told her, "Oh, that's not necessary, so long as she knows that I'm not a thief." I wish I could have seen the face on Rosie when she realized she was the one about to go to jail instead of me, but I did get to see her sitting in the back of the squad car. I could describe a woman who was repeatedly shaking her head in anger, flailing about. I could portray a cold, callous woman ready for her sentence to be served and to get it over with. I could tell you that she was a flood of tears flowing down as her 20-something son looks on from outside the car, barricaded by Officer Gold. But all of these depictions are painfully incorrect. It was so anticlimactic. She just sat there, no anger, no visible emotion whatsoever. She got released from her zip-tied wrists, grabbing a waiting piece of paper from Goldie, locking the store doors, and nonchalantly walking to her vehicle. While all of this was happening, Officer 2 had been asking me some more questions, almost trying to talk me into pressing charges, and handed me a victim's rights pamphlet. I guess in case I change my mind and want to turn this into a petty revenge story, TLDR. My shifty eyes, weird social tics and spectrum-adjacent OCDness gets me manhandled by a convenience store clerk who accused me of shoplifting, making me empty my pockets. I emptied her store instead. An AMP 200B. Let's see if this updates takes. My iPad wouldn't let me yesterday. As I said in the comments and was trying to post as an update, Officer Gold brought me paperwork, took pictures of my arm and hand. I didn't even notice my hand bruising until he said something. In my classroom, on my 7th hour prep. He even told me how to word things to not leave any question as to what happened. Very succinct and factual, and descriptive of the damage inflicted. I am so thankful to work in this community and to have such a great and supportive SRO and school community. Thank you, Goldie. The malicious compliance was absolutely perfect and satisfying. OP dramatically emptied his pockets, turning the false accusation into an embarrassing mess for the aggressive cashier. Adding insult to injury, karma struck when the cops sided against the cashier. The next Reddit story from r/anti-work. Company wouldn't honor the agreed upon days off when hiring me, with medical documentation. I quit and cost them their quarterly bonuses and a $350,000 contract. TLDR. Bosses wouldn't honor the days off they agreed to. I quit, and there was nobody in the company who could easily replace me, causing a domino effect that cost them a lot of money and other employees. Longer story. I've spent the last few years working in fabrication, running some very specialized machines, industrial laser cutters for sheet metal. I'm very good at my job and have worked my way up to a fairly good hourly wage. I started working for this new employer in the fall last year. They specialize in HVAC ducting with an insanely quick turnaround time, and when I applied with my previous experience, they were excited to have me. For background, I have a medical condition that requires weekly appointments and follow-ups. I got into a treatment program I fought for months to get into, and it has been a lifesaver for me. I was 100% upfront about this with my new employer, stating that I absolutely needed Fridays off for medical appointments, but they could run me ragged through the week as long as I got that day off consistently. I provided documentation from my doctor backing this up. They agreed, and I worked an evening shift starting Sunday and ending Thursday morning, anywhere from 50 to 55 hours a week. This worked fine for a few months until the company started an expansion in its business and started taking on way more than they were able to comfortably accommodate. They were hiring people for my shift left and right, but could never seem to retain anyone after 2 months or so, because the work-life balance was non-existent. I remember one welder, a good hard worker, coming up to me as he was quitting, because in his words, "I've seen my kids a total of 15 minutes in the last 2 weeks." At the 6-month mark of my tenure there, I was the most senior employee on my shift, except the supervisor. The turnover rate was so high, there was no point to put in the effort to learn someone's name before they were gone. Throughout all this expansion, they never hired another laser operator. The machine was essentially running 24/7 between myself and 2 other people, and it was the most important machine in our workflow, because nothing else got done unless those parts were cut out. At the beginning of the year, they wanted to move me to a traditional Monday-Friday shift, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I refused because I wouldn't be able to continue with my medical program, nor get anything else done during the week. Around the middle of spring, they got backed up because one of the machines went down. I was asked if I could make an exception to my day off and come in on Friday. Pretty please. Me, being an idiot, I agreed to it and cancelled my appointment that week, thinking it would be a one-off because the machine was only down for a day. Legitimately happens. Once I made an exception the first time, you can see where this is going. A few weeks later, they asked me to do it again, not because the machine went down, but because they had just overextended themselves on a really expensive contract with a very big company. I objected, stating my medical exemption, and they pulled someone else in to work the shift. This happened a few times, and I did end up rearranging a few appointments because, again, I was an idiot. Things came to a head at the end of spring. The shift as a whole had a meeting that week and decided they wanted to put it to a vote to take that Sunday off and work on Friday instead for the week. I was outvoted, wanting to work the original shift, and it was suddenly decided that everyone would be coming in Friday. The next day, a Monday, I go in and talk to HR and make them aware that this is a recurring issue. The HR manager says he'll handle it and get back to me the next day. I talk to my doctor and let him know there's a chance I'll need to reschedule again. I get a phone call from the medical office stating that I've ended up rescheduling or cancelling a lot in the past few months, And if it kept happening, I was at risk of getting dropped from the program. I cannot and will not allow that to happen. I go in the next day and talk to HR, letting them know that I was promised this wasn't going to be an issue. I reminded them they agreed to my scheduling and I had provided them documentation that I could not work on Fridays. HR calls in my supervisor. For context, my supervisor was one of those people who don't really see value in anything but work. He got married last year and he took no time off for his wedding. He worked a full shift on Friday, got married Saturday, and was back at work on Sunday morning. He expects everyone underneath him to adhere to this insanity disguised as work ethic, and is one of the reasons our turnover was so high. What follows is a heated argument about how he needs me to work that shift, and he won't even try to call in someone else. I tell them I'll come in on Saturday. That won't work. I tell them I'll do 4 14-hour shifts that week to make up the production, as this company has absolutely no qualms with handing out overtime to anyone who wants it. That won't work either. Supervisor stands firm. HR looks at me and shrugs, telling me there's nothing he can do. I'm pissed at this point and go to work my shift, updating my resume and seeing what other jobs are available in my field, and there's a lot. The plan was to get a new job and turn in notice, but then the supervisor comes up to me and tries to be buddy-buddy. He starts a long-winded yarn about how sometimes we have to sacrifice for work, and that there are things expected of us as adults in a functioning society, and then tells me, you need to make a decision. I have heard that phrase a handful of times in my life, and nobody who ever says it to me does so out of concern. It's always a, you need to decide to do what I'm telling you to do, of your own free will. I grunt and say, yeah, I guess I do. Asshole then slaps me on the back, smiles, and says, great, see you Friday. That was the breaking point for me. I did work the rest of my shift, but at the end of the night I drafted up a resignation letter effective immediately, left it on HR's desk, and walked out. Went home, put my phone on silent, and slept like the dead. I'm almost 40, and that's the first time in my life I've ever quit a job on the spot. I had 4 missed calls from my company the next morning, 2 from HR, 1 from the boss of the company, and 1 from my now ex-supervisor. Never returned them. I did end up getting a new job at a company that respects my hours and has a much better work-life balance, and a raise in my salary to boot. 6 weeks had gone by, and I stopped in at the gas station that all of us would go to on break to grab a drink. I ran into one of the only co-workers that I liked, and he told me what happened. When I quit, they didn't have anyone else on my shift who knew how to run and operate the machine. They started leaning on the other 2 people, causing one of them to quit. And on top of that, half a dozen welders and other fabricators quit as well in a domino effect. The entire production completely backed up because of this, and that big client that I mentioned earlier, they're named after a particular rainforest in South America and were building a bunch of new distribution centers in the area. Our company landed the contract to do their HVAC work on several, with a possibility of extending it outward to more depending on how the initial partnership went, and it went poorly. They missed the target date for the production run, and the penalties for doing so ate up any profit they were going to get from the job that they underbid, along with causing Rainforest Company to cancel the contract after the initial work. Nobody got bonuses that quarter, causing even more people to quit. The company has several locations across the US. In one quarter, they went from having the highest profit numbers to being dead last. I can't even imagine the that the C-suite execs threw at my old boss and HR supervisor over that happening. Now, when I look at their company page on Indeed, they're desperately looking for people, but the salary ranges are down about 20% from when I applied, when things were good. All I wanted was for them to honor the 1 day off I needed, and they agreed to. This story is a testament to the importance of advocating for oneself and one's needs in the workplace. The OP, a skilled fabrication worker, was hired with the understanding that they would have Fridays off for medical appointments. However, as time went on, The company repeatedly tried to renege on this agreement, leading to a heated confrontation and ultimately the OP's resignation. The employee quit, triggering a domino effect that resulted in the loss of several other employees and a significant financial blow to the company, including the loss of a $350,000 contract and quarterly bonuses.